Well, would you Adam and Eve it, guys? It's Christmas time again. And would you also Adam and Eve it that it's been 10 years since I've done Thomascember? Yes, for the last 9 years I've been talking about Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, from Series 1 to Series 23 and the specials. And they've all ranged from gigantic hits to gigantic bombs, including a certain special which I shall not name here because I've just put it out of my memory and I do not want to risk putting it back in my memory by even mentioning that name. But I digress. So I've been rattling my brains thinking, what can I do for Thomascember this year in order to commemorate 10 years of it? And then I suddenly decided, why not go back to where I started all this, in the classic series. Series 1 to be exact. Now I know what you're all going to say, but Dalek44, you reviewed Series 1 to 7 throughout the first year of Thomascember. Well, that was the series as a whole rather than each episode. I just went through the whole series as well as the characters that were introduced, but never talked in detail about the episodes. So I decided this year, why not go back to Series 1 and review it episode by episode. So for the next 26 days you're going to be seeing Thomascember videos talking about Series 1 from Thomas and Gordon to Thomas's Christmas party. And keep in mind also that all of these are going to be my opinions, so I'm going to be talking about the episodes as they are, the characters that were introduced to it, some of the differences from the books to the TV series, and just all about my opinions of it and see how it holds up to this day. I just felt that there was no better way to celebrate 10 years of Thomascember than by going back to the first series where it all started. So throughout December 2021, I'm going to be talking about each episode from Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends Series 1. All aboard for Thomascember 2021. Before I talk about the first episode, I'm just going to go through a quick history of the Railway series' funny TV series history. The series, written and created by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry, ran from 1945 to 1972, and was later continued by his son Christopher Awdry from 1983 to 2011. And in the 1950s, the BBC made a proposal with Robert Awdry to adapt his stories into television, and they decided to adapt The Sad Story of Henry first, which was broadcast on television on the 14th of June 1953. But when the episode was transmitted, an engine, most likely Henry, derailed due to a set of points not being set correctly. On screen, a crew member's hand could be seen putting the locomotive back on the rails. Of course, they couldn't have redone that back then because it was back in the days when they did TV shows live, so they had no time to redo it. The episode, of course, was a huge failure and no further adaptations were made after that. All we have to go by are these possible pictures of some of the engines that would have been shown in the Railway series TV adaptation. Although it's neither confirmed nor denied that these aren't the actual models, since we don't know. And the episode was very most likely recorded over during the times and no one's been able to find a copy of it. Then in 1976, Andrew Lloyd Webber made a proposal with Robert Awdry to do an animated TV adaptation of the show. But it was cancelled because Wilbert Awdry wasn't keen to let the Americans get their hands on his property. From what I've heard, Wilbert proclaimed that if the Americans get their hands on it, the whole franchise would be ruined. And we all know how that's going to turn out like with the new series being made. So any further ideas of a TV series based on the books was all up in the air until the 1980s, when a woman named Britt Allcroft came up with the idea to adapt the series with model engines. The idea was given the green light by Robert Awdry, but Allcroft couldn't do this alone. She needed the help of some very talented people. So she called on Robert D. Cardenay to help her produce the show along with David Mitton to produce and direct the series. David Mitton had previously had experience with working with models from working with Jerry Ansner's company to create special effects in shows like Thunderbirds. So he already had the experience with TV shows and models, so he was right for the job. He and Robert would go on to work on the short-lived sister series Tugs, another big success from David Mitton. She also hired composers Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell to create the iconic theme tunes for the show. Then all she needed was the right person to tell the stories. So she called upon famous Beatles drummer Ringo Starr, which he gladly accepted. And through her production company Clearwater Features, Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends first aired in 1984. Which brings us to the first episode of the series, Thomas and Gordon. Based on the first story from the Railway series book number 2, Thomas the Tank Engine, Thomas and Gordon. The episode follows Thomas, the little blue tank engine who works at the big station on Sodor. His job is to fetch coaches for the other engines and then take them away when the big engines have done pulling them. Thomas thinks he works the hardest and is often cheeky to the bigger engines, especially Gordon, the biggest and proudest engine, who pulls the express. Thomas likes to startle him by whistling loudly and saying rude comments like,
"Wake up, lazy bones, why don't you work hard like me? Wake up, lazy bones, do some hard work for a change. You can't catch me."
After having suffered this annoyance several times, Gordon decides to play a trick on Thomas and get back at him. The next day, Thomas's crew are unable to start him. Gordon and the passengers are impatiently waiting at Knapford Station for Thomas to bring the coaches. Finally, Thomas starts, hurries into the station to get the express coaches and bring them to the platform behind Gordon. Gordon then enacts his plan by quickly backing up to the coaches and tells the passengers to get in quickly. Thomas usually pushes behind the trains to help them start, but is always uncoupled first. This time, however, Thomas's crew do not have time to uncouple and Gordon starts off quickly, with Thomas being pulled along. Gordon races through the Sudrian countryside to show Thomas how hard it is to pull the express. And Thomas eventually learns his lesson about what hard work means and that he was never to be cheeky to Gordon again. Some people might think that this was a rather odd episode to adapt first, since it wasn't the first story in the Railway series. In fact, the first story was Edward's Day Out, which was then adapted for the second episode of the series. But in all honesty, it makes sense that they would adapt this story first, since they put Thomas's name in the title of the series, rather than just call it the Railway series. I assume this decision was made by Britt Allcroft and David Mitton because they wanted Thomas to be the main focus of the series for the young audiences to relate to. And plus, the name Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends sounds more catchy than the Railway series would have done on TV. The episode does a great job of introducing us to Thomas and Gordon. Thomas being a cheeky little tank engine who shunts coaches in the yards for the big engines to take on journeys, but thinks that no engine works as hard as he does, and Gordon being the pompous big express engine who loves to pull the express and doesn't take kindly to engines playing tricks on him, especially Thomas. But while we don't see Gordon to his full pompous attitude yet, we would get to see that shine in the next episode. But this was a really good way for them to introduce us to the characters. Then years later, for the 70th anniversary of the Railway series, the story got adapted again by Andrew Brenner for the DVD release The Adventure Begins, which retold the story of how Thomas got his branch line. Ringo Starr does a really good job narrating this episode in my opinion. I've heard some people on the internet say that he's a little bit not as energetic as he is in the second series, but I've got to give the guy some credit. It was his first time narrating for a children's TV series, and plus I honestly see this as him being like a grandfather telling the stories to his grandkids. Nice and calm. So it's a really good start for Ringo Starr, in my opinion. It's also the first time we get to hear Mike and Jr.'s music, as well as the theme of Gordon, which sounds big and proud like the character. And the idea of using railway models as the characters for the animation is just unique for the time. I mean, before this show came out, no other TV show had ever done this. The only other examples I could think of are Tugs, Theodore Tugboat and Run, but all these came after Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, which makes it the first one to have ever done this, and that's just what makes it so special and unique in my opinion. The episode isn't meant to be big and grand and epic as some people might expect nowadays from children's TV shows. It's just an episode that's endlessly charming and likeable. It does its job well to introduce us to Thomas the Tank Engine and the world of Sodor, and I always have fond memories looking back at it every time I put the DVD on. And this was only the first of the many episodes that were to come from this TV series, and Thomas and Gordon was a great way to start the TV series in my opinion.